first question for Mr. Harbaugh on jobs and the economy. Since 2017, January, the unemployment rate has gone down to about 3.7% and economic growth has increased. Despite these positive trends, the federal budget deficit has risen to almost $1 trillion for fiscal year 2019, and the federal debt has increased by almost $3 trillion in the last 2 years. One of the citizens who submitted a question through our Google Forms, Mr. Brian Dill from Polk, Ohio, says that while both parties talk about controlling the deficit, at the end of the day, the deficit continues to rise. Building on Mr. Dill's comment, the question is this: how can the federal government continue to promote economic growth and job creation while trying to bring down the federal budget deficit?
The federal budget deficit is at historic proportions, and the first thing we have to do is call a spade a spade. When you look at the tax bill that Congressman Gibbs is so proud of, well, I am grateful for that sliver that went to middle-class families. The burden of debt put on every middle-class family in the United States is $23,000. And I would ask the middle-class families in this room, like I've asked myself and my friends, did you do your share of that $23,000 of debt? I don't think so. The worst thing about this tax bill is that the vast majority of the giveaway went to people making more than $1 million in corporations, including a provision that actually incentivizes the shipping of jobs overseas. So when you talk about economic growth, the first thing we have to do is tell the truth about a tax bill that actually pays companies to ship good jobs overseas. But we need to get back to building things here in Ohio again, like we used to. We need an infrastructure bill that addresses the 1,600 crumbling bridges in this country, but that goes beyond just roads and potholes and thinks much more expansively about infrastructure to include education, the foundation of any 21st century economy, and high-speed internet. To the point about hiring and job growth, the fact is that wages have not kept up with inflation. It is harder than ever for working families to get by. I had a conversation with a gentleman around the corner at the mart where we live, who talked about picking up a third shift just so he could afford ballet lessons for his daughter. There is something humiliating about having to look your children in the eye and admit to them that you are not going to be able to leave them what your parents left you. And that is where we are as a country. Wall Street is not Main Street. And I think Congress needs to be reminded of that wages have not kept up with inflation, that we don't have an investment in infrastructure that is going to provide that foundation for economic growth going into the 21st century. And I'll point you to just one stat, because it really hits home. That lack of investment in high-speed internet, the foundation of the 21st century economic investment. We have the 400th worst internet connectivity in the nation out of 435 congressional districts. If that's not bad enough, we have a congressman who sits on the Agricultural Committee, which controls investment in rural high-speed internet. It's not just that Congressman Gibbs lacks the power or the leadership role to do his job, he is failing to do it even when he has the power. That's inexcusable.
Mr. Gibbs. Thank you. Talk about debt. Let's not forget when President Obama, the Democrats control, he doubled debt for all combined from George Washington to President Obama. They doubled the debt. So let's not talk about what the Democrats do. We talk about the tax bill. The reason we have to do the tax bill is we have to grow this economy, and we're seeing that growth. We had less than 2% GDP growth, and President Obama said that was the new norm. Couldn't do any better. You have to get a magic wand to do something better. I think we found the magic wand. And we got this economy growing at 3.5% or higher this year. And you take a $20 trillion economy, 1.5 to 3.5%, that's a big deal. And we're seeing more people working, more people are paying FICA taxes, more people paying for Social Security and Medicare. So that's all a good thing. We saw $305 billion come back first quarter this year from our businesses overseas, because we lowered that tax rate from 35% for C Corps down to 21% and did a one-time 15.5% to bring that repatriate that money. It's coming back. That's why we've seen 400 to 500,000 new manufacturing jobs. Manufacturing is coming back to this country. So we're growing this economy. We cannot cut our way out of this problem. We got to be responsible, but we also have to grow the economy. And you talk about internet. Currently, my opponent hasn't read the Farm Bill, because in the Farm Bill that we just passed out of the House, we have a provision for internet, and I fully support President Trump's initiative, the $200 billion initiative for infrastructure, which we're going to do an infrastructure bill either later this year or first of next year, and $50 billion of that is earmarked to leverage private sector money for rural America. And I do believe that we are on a process here where when President Eisenhower was president, he started the interstate highway system. Just think where we'd be if we didn't have that. That's where we are with rural broadband, internet. And now we got the new 5G technology coming on, and we got good opportunities here. But we did a tax bill that helps families. We doubled the child income tax credit from $1,000 to $2,000. That's a tax credit, dollar to dollar, from your tax bill. And if you don't have a federal tax bill, you get a $1,400 refund from the federal government. We kept the earned income tax credit, so we're helping the lower income people on the tax scale. But we're seeing, we just passed in the House what we call income tax 2.0. That'll help local businesses, small businesses get started and grow, and also help families save more money and save for their kids' college education, and universal, we call them USA accounts, universal savings accounts, to help savings tax-free for anything they want to do. And we have some other changes proposed. So we retained some of the important tax credits, like the housing tax credit, to help as we rejuvenate, seeing our small towns in rural America, our inner cities. So there's been quite a bit done in the tax bill that's growing this economy, and that's why you see this kind of growth, and that's why you see more people, more jobs available to those people. That's a big turnaround from 2 years ago. So I'm really encouraged what's happening, the way to do more. But when he says that, oh, my time is up, but I'll just quickly say the 83% for the 1%, that's false, because that's counting the individual tax return ending tax breaks, because no Democrat would support us, so make it permanent.
What Congressman Gibbs failed to $23,000 of debt that every family in America has assumed because of this tax burden. He thinks the economy in Ohio is doing well because he's not in Ohio. He's in Washington working for his corporate paymasters, where he has saw fit to raise his pay 3 times while voting against an increase in the minimum wage 5 times. The only organization in American life that gets to set its own pay that way, you know who has the best health care in this room? Congressman Gibbs. You know who has the best pension plan in this room? Congressman Gibbs. Don't you think we deserve a share of that?